What happens when a country decides to save a dying lake, no matter the cost? This question is at the heart of the story of Erhai Lake, a once pristine freshwater jewel in southwest China's Yunnan province. For decades, this lake was not only a natural wonder but also the lifeblood of the local Dali people, an ethnic minority who depended on its waters for fishing, farming, and spiritual practices. Yet, in recent years, unchecked human activity and environmental neglect pushed Erhai Lake to the brink of collapse. The response from the local government was swift and unprecedented, a massive environmental crackdown that led to the removal of over 40,000 tons of waste from the lake. What happened after this effort surprised even the scientists involved. Erhai Lake, sometimes called the Mother Lake by locals, has long been central to the life and culture of the Dali people. Nestled in Yunnan province near the Myanmar border, the lake covers approximately 97 square miles, roughly the size of Salt Lake City, and sits high at 6,470 feet above sea level. Surrounded by the towering Kangon Mountains on one side and the historic city of Dali on the other, it was considered a natural sanctuary, clean, deep, and timeless. For generations, villages thrived on its shores, with daily life intimately tied to the rhythms of the lake. Fishing, irrigation, and religious ceremonies revolved around its water, and the lake seemed eternal. However, the early 2000s brought dramatic changes. Dali, known for its old temples and peaceful pace, began attracting tourists as China's middle class grew. What was once a tranquil retreat turned into a bustling destination, drawing millions annually. Between 2013 and 2016, the number of tourists skyrocketed beyond 40 million a year, more than the entire population of California packed into this small region. Entrepreneurs capitalized on the boom, converting farmhouses into boutique hotels and lakeside plots into rooftop bars. Entire villages morphed into what some called Instagram towns, vibrant but hurried and unchecked. Unfortunately, much of this development occurred without proper regulation or infrastructure upgrades. Many new businesses bypassed formal permits, and crucially, sewage systems were not installed or maintained. An internal government report later revealed hundreds of guest houses and cafes were dumping untreated wastewater directly into Erhai Lake or nearby ditches flowing into it. This wastewater included grease, soap, bleach, and raw sewage. Along with water pollution, solid waste piled up, especially during peak tourist seasons when plastic bags, bottles, and food scraps littered the area. The local waste management infrastructure was overwhelmed, old sewage systems couldn't handle the influx, garbage trucks lagged behind, and as long as money flowed, few asked tough questions. On the surface, Erhai still looked beautiful. Drone footage showcased calm waters, swans gliding by, and paddle boats. Yet beneath this facade, a silent crisis was unfolding. Fishermen who had plied these waters for generations began returning empty-handed. Thick green algae blooms appeared in spring and summer, choking parts of the lake's surface. These blooms, fueled by nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizer runoff and untreated sewage, blocked sunlight and depleted oxygen in the water, devastating aquatic plants and wildlife. One species, Otalia acuminatida, once abundant near the shore, nearly vanished. Locals noticed changes. Farmers detected odd smells in irrigation ditches, tourists complained of musty odors along some stretches, and guest house owners discreetly installed air filters to avoid bad reviews. Some businesses quietly shut down. An environmental scientist working with a local NGO described the situation in 2016 as an invisible collapse. The lake appeared fine on maps and promotional materials, but biologically it was flatlining. Despite growing evidence, government response was slow and vague. Developers kept building, banking on continued tourist seasons. By 2016, the signs were undeniable. Water visibility dropped to less than 3 feet in some places. Trash and oil slicks floated on the surface, and fish populations plummeted by over 60% in under a decade. Still, tourists mostly remained unaware, and locals, while concerned, had grown accustomed to the new, degraded reality. Then came the tipping point in early 2017. The local government in Dali could no longer ignore the crisis. Behind closed doors, officials decided it was time for drastic action. On March 1, 2017, they announced one of the most sweeping environmental crackdowns in recent Chinese history. This wasn't a simple PR move or minor policy adjustment. It was a full-scale intervention aimed at halting the lake's rapid decline. More than 2,400 businesses along the lake's eastern shore were ordered to close immediately. Guest houses, cafes, bars, rental properties, without exception. Construction projects near the lake were halted. Bulldozers dismantled illegal structures within hours. Electricity was cut off to offending businesses overnight. Streets that were once bustling with tourists fell silent. For residents, the crackdown was both a shock and a relief. Some welcomed the effort to save the lake they cherished. Others faced sudden loss of livelihood and uncertainty. Officials framed the crackdown as the first step in a comprehensive plan to restore ecological balance and preserve Erhai Lake for future generations. But at the time, few knew just how severe the damage was. Environmental teams spread across the lake, collecting samples and mapping pollution hotspots. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. Tons of garbage clogged feeder streams, while decades-old sewage pipes continued leaking waste. Algae blooms grew larger and appeared earlier in the season. The lake bed was littered with black, oxygen-deprived mud smelling of sulfur. In many areas, dredging was the only option. Barges with mechanical arms scraped sediment and debris from the bottom, focusing especially on former guest house sites where raw sewage had been directly dumped. Convoys of trucks hauled wet sludge away to newly constructed treatment facilities outside the city. This massive cleanup was only half the battle. To prevent future contamination, Dali launched a complete overhaul of its sewage infrastructure. The centerpiece was a 19-mile pipeline encircling the lake, designed to capture all sewage from homes, hotels, and farms before it could reach the water. Numerous pumping stations were installed to intercept runoff, gray water, and storm overflow. Old plumbing was ripped out and replaced. Some villages temporarily evacuated residents to allow underground system modernization. By late 2018, new or upgraded wastewater treatment plants processed tens of millions of gallons daily, using advanced filtration and disinfection technologies. Yet the most innovative part of the restoration wasn't mechanical. Planners embarked on an ambitious ecological corridor project, converting hundreds of acres of degraded shoreline into artificial and semi-natural wetlands. These wetlands act as nature's water purifiers. Their plants absorb nitrogen, trap sediments, and provide critical habitat for wildlife. They also help stabilize lake banks and slow tributary flows carrying pollutants. Nearly 2,000 acres around Erhai were targeted for restoration, with native reeds, aquatic grasses, and algae planted to cleanse water before it reached the lake. Concrete riverbanks were replaced with winding walkways, wooden bridges, and bird-watching platforms, transforming once polluted areas into inviting community spaces. Locals who once discarded trash near the lake now picnicked by its banks. Wildlife began returning. Dragonflies, frogs, water birds, and small schools of fish reappeared. Biologists monitored progress with dozens of sensors installed throughout the lake, continuously tracking water quality and ecosystem health. The story of Erhai Lake is a powerful example of what happens when a government commits to saving an endangered ecosystem, regardless of cost. It reveals the complex interplay between economic development, environmental stewardship, and community resilience. Most importantly, it shows that even when nature seems broken beyond repair, careful, large-scale efforts combining cleanup, infrastructure, and ecological restoration can bring a lake back from the edge of disaster. So what does Erhai Lake's journey teach us? It is a reminder that environmental preservation requires vigilance and planning, especially in places where tourism and development intersect. The lake's revival also underscores the value of listening to local voices, empowering communities, and using science to guide action. While challenges remain, Erhai's recovery offers hope for other threatened ecosystems facing similar pressures around the world.